So what we will do today is that we'll discuss some topics from papillosquamous diseases. So do you have any clue what are the diseases, the main diseases that is coming under this topic, papillosquamous disorders in dermatology? Because in today's session, we are not going into general derma, we are not going to discuss about all the skin lesions and all. We are directly jumping into the diseases. So Dr. Ritu says psoriasis, exactly, that is one of the most important. Not bullous pemphigoid, because that comes under the bullous diseases. Okay, so psoriasis is correct. Anyone else? We have a good team here. Yes, Raji, that is lichen planus, exactly. Any other bonus question? Any other papillosquamous disorder? You know, I agree to psoriasis and lichen. Something else? Pityriasis rosea, excellent. Okay, pityriasis rosea is there. Pityriasis rubra pilaris is there. Lichen nitidus is there. So there are so many diseases. So today, since we have a short session, we will be discussing basically about psoriasis and then pityriasis rosea, and then we'll wind up with lichen planus. Okay? So if it is all fine, let us get started. So the first disease that we will be discussing is psoriasis. As all of you know, you all must have seen patients of psoriasis, right? Those patients who come to you with erythematous plaques with silvery white scales. So what is the problem with psoriasis? Is that it is a chronic disease where there is a lot of flares and remissions. So the patient may feel that the symptoms are worsening, and at times the symptoms would be getting better. Again, there is going to be a flare and then worsening. So in today's discussion, I would like to limit the discussion for discussing the major points that is important on an MCQ perspective, but definitely on a clinical aspect, okay, while discussing all the clinical aspects. Now, let us first begin with the predisposing factors for psoriasis. So please write down, there are two predisposing factors, that is HLA-CW6 and HLA-B27. So HLA-CW6 is associated with juvenile onset psoriasis. So by juvenile onset psoriasis, I mean that there is an early onset of the disease. So please write down, there is both early onset of the disease along with severe disease. Means the patient is going to present with the symptoms of psoriasis early in his life, and the symptoms are going to be severe as well. The second association is with HLA-B27. So you must have heard of HLA-B27 in so many diseases, isn't it? So similarly, in psoriasis also, HLA-B27 is associated, and it is mostly associated with psoriatic arthritis. Okay, it is also associated with pustular psoriasis. Pustular psoriasis. So this is the first thing that we have discussed today. Two associations, that is HLA-CW6 and HLA-B27. HLA-CW6 is associated with an early onset and a severe form of a disease, and HLA-B27 is associated with psoriatic arthritis, where the psoriasis is involving the joints, and pustular psoriasis. So we'll be discussing about the various clinical presentations of psoriasis first, so that we understand better about the disease. Okay, so let's see what are the various clinical types. So I'm sure psoriasis is one topic that you all must have read some time or the other, because it is a very high yielding topic and lot of important topics or points to be memorized as well. So please try to see how we can simplify the types, clinical variants of psoriasis, how we can learn it in a systematic way. Okay? So first, I would like to tell you that let us divide psoriasis into 4 different categories. The first one is the plaque type of psoriasis. Okay, I suppose all of you know, all of you are very clear about what is a plaque. Okay, multiple papules, they confluence together to become a plaque. I'll show you the images also. So if you see any plaque type of psoriasis, we can categorize it into psoriasis vulgaris. Now tell me, do you know what is the word meaning of vulgaris? What is the word meaning of vulgaris? So all of you in the chat box, Exactly. So if you have any specific queries, please note it down in the Q&A box. But for the interaction purpose, please use the chat box. Exactly. So Aditya, Pavitra, Ramya, all of you are getting it right. Kritika. So this means the most common. So psoriasis vulgaris is the most common. And for time being, let us imagine that the most common type of psoriasis is going to be the plaque type of psoriasis. The second type is pustular psoriasis. From the name itself, we know this is the pustular type. So what is a pustule? A pustule is a papule which contains pus. Okay. And then two other variants that you can remember is psoriatic erythroderma and psoriatic arthritis. So time being, psoriasis vulgaris, pustular psoriasis, psoriatic erythroderma, and psoriatic arthritis. Now, let us concentrate on the first thing, like what is psoriasis vulgaris, or is there any subtypes again? Of course, yes. So medicine cannot be that easy, isn't it? So what we do is psoriasis vulgaris, we are going to divide it again into multiple subtypes. So I hope you are able to catch up with me with my pace. Okay, if you want me to slow down, let me know immediately. Or if the pace is all fine, just drop a small message in the chat box immediately so that there is no delay. So the first thing that I am going to discuss today, yeah, fine, is psoriasis vulgaris. Now let us see. Pavitra, I will explain you what is the fourth type. I'll explain you all the types now. So now let us concentrate on psoriasis vulgaris. So in psoriasis vulgaris, now please try to imagine if there is an acute form, there is going to be a chronic form, and then two other different types. So please write down the four types of psoriasis vulgaris can be acute guttate psoriasis, that is the acute form. The chronic is the chronic plaque psoriasis, and then comes the palmoplantar psoriasis, and the last one is inverse psoriasis. So acute guttate psoriasis, chronic plaque psoriasis, palmoplantar psoriasis, and the last one is inverse or flexural psoriasis. Now, let us discuss each and everything one by one. Acute means there should be a sudden onset of symptoms. I hope all of you agree. So if there is a sudden onset of symptoms, try to remember that acute guttate, sudden onset of symptoms usually happens when there is when it is associated with any kind of an infection. So please write down what is the major clinical presentation of acute guttate psoriasis. This is usually seen in a young adult. This is usually seen in a young adult. So who may complain of a sore throat? Who may complain of a sore throat? And what is the culprit here? The usual culprit is going to be group A, beta hemolytic streptococcus. So usually, yes, chronic plague is the most common. I'll get back to you about it, Dr. Praveen. Okay, please try to concentrate on acute guttate psoriasis. So acute guttate psoriasis, if a patient says, if you get a patient who is around 25 years old, a young adult comes to you with complaints of a sore throat. And the culprit behind the sore throat is going to be group A, beta hemolytic streptococcus. Now, what happens after the sore throat? After the sore throat, the patient develops multiple papillosquamous eruptions. Multiple papillosquamous eruptions. Now, how does these papillosquamous eruptions looks like? It looks like raindrops. Okay, so that is the reason why it is also called as raindrop psoriasis. So that is why it is also called as raindrop psoriasis. So these are the important points that you can remember in your mind, so that if there is any clinical scenario that a patient is saying, complaining that I had a sore throat, and after sore throat I got this multiple eruptions of reddish erythematous small plaques. Okay, these are all small plaques. Okay, so the diagnosis is going to be acute guttate psoriasis. So if there is a question like which is a psoriasis, type of psoriasis that is associated with an infection, so the answer would be acute guttate psoriasis. Now, what is the bacteria that is associated with acute guttate psoriasis? The answer would be beta hemolytic streptococcus. So I hope it is clear to all of you. Now we are coming to the most common type of psoriasis vulgaris. Now earlier all of you told that psoriasis vulgaris itself means most common. Now among the most common, what is the most common? That is the chronic plaque psoriasis. That is why I have written it MC here, okay, which means the most common. So the most common type of psoriasis is a chronic stable plaque psoriasis, and that is also categorized under psoriasis vulgaris. Now, do you know how do you describe a classic lesion of psoriasis? Any idea? Let us make it a little interactive. So you are seeing a patient like this who is presenting to you with these kind of skin lesions. So would you like to demonstrate? How do you describe? Okay, Ajay, Ramya, all of you are saying it is silvery white scales. But before silvery white scales, what is the primary skin lesion? Yes, Aditya, very good. This is seen on the extensor surface. So you have an idea. So what is a primary skin lesion here? So please note down, always mention the primary skin lesion first. So you will describe it as erythematous plaque because it is a plaque lesion. Okay, this is an erythematous plaque with silvery white scales. Silvery white scales. So this is a typical presentation of a psoriasis vulgaris, the most common type. So this is going to be an erythematous plaque, means the plaque is going to be red in color, and above this plaque you are going to have silvery white color plaques, scales. So along with this erythematous plaques and silvery white scales, what is the area where you see the lesions? The lesions are predominantly seen over the extensor surfaces. So please note down the second point, predominantly seen over the extensor surface. Extensor surface. So these are the 2 points that you will remember. So please write down one more point here. So this is the type of psoriasis where you can actually demonstrate a Koebner's phenomenon. Okay. So any idea what is a Koebner's phenomenon? So Koebner's phenomenon means that wherever there is a trauma, the lesions will develop over that area. So this is called as a Koebner's phenomenon, means the development of skin lesions at the site of trauma. Exactly, it is also called as the isomorphic phenomenon. Isomorphic phenomenon. Excellent. So regarding the psoriasis vulgaris, let us quickly try to remember erythematous plaque with silvery white scales, and it is usually seen over the extensor surfaces. And in this patient, you will be able to demonstrate a Koebner's phenomenon. So there are many more things regarding the treatment and all. We'll come to it one by one. So this slide is basically for you to understand the clinical presentation. Okay. Now, let us see the next one. See, this is also called as the chronic stable plaque psoriasis, Dr. Ajay. Okay, I have written the heading in the top. Chronic stable plaque kind of a psoriasis. Now let us see the next one. This is self-explanatory. There is no need of me to explain. What do you mean by palmoplantar psoriasis? Means the palms as well as the soles is affected. And what do you see? You would be able to see these kind of thick adherent scales over the palms and soles. So this is a variant where you will be seeing the psoriasis skin lesions basically over the palms and soles. So palms and soles are affected. Now let us see what is the last one, that is the inverse or the flexural psoriasis. Now where do you find the skin lesion in this image? In this image, where is the lesion present? So the lesion is present in the axilla of the patient, which means that is the flexural areas. So if a patient presents to you with this erythematous plaque over the axilla, over the groin area, or any body folds, this is called as inverse psoriasis or flexural psoriasis. Because why? Usually we expect a psoriasis skin lesions over the extensor surfaces, isn't it? So this time you're finding it right opposite. So that is why this is called as inverse psoriasis or flexural psoriasis. So seen in the body folds or flexures. So these are the basic idea of the clinical types of psoriasis vulgaris. So quickly, acute gut ache associated with infection because it is acute. Chronic means that is the most common type seen in the extensor surfaces. Koebner phenomenon is seen. And if the psoriasis is localized to the palms and the soles, it is called as palmoplantar psoriasis. And if you're seeing the psoriasis kind of a lesion in the flexural areas, you call it as inverse psoriasis or flexural psoriasis. So if all of you agree, I shall just proceed further. So this is the first type of psoriasis that we have discussed now. Now, remember the first classification, psoriasis vulgaris, and after psoriasis vulgaris, it was the pustular psoriasis. Now let us see what is the basic clinical presentation of pustular psoriasis. So I hope all of you have noted down the important points. Now let us quickly see this pustular psoriasis now. So pustular psoriasis. So all of you, pustule means there is a papule which contains pus within it. So whenever you find a pustule anywhere in the body, the first thing that comes to your mind is always a bacterial infection, isn't it? Because a pus anywhere, be it a pustule or whatever, bacterial infection comes to our mind. Now, in pustular psoriasis, try to remember it in this way. There are two forms. That is a localized variant and a generalized variant. Remember what is a localized variant of psoriasis vulgaris? It was palmoplantar psoriasis. So localized variant of pustular psoriasis is also the same. It is again going to be localized to the palms and the soles. And by the name itself, what is going to be the skin lesion? The skin lesion is going to be pustules. So please write down, you would be able to see pustules over the palms and soles. So this is a typical presentation of a localized pustular kind of a psoriasis. So many small pustules is seen in this image. Now, you are seeing a lot of pustules in this image, and as a good doctor, you are now going to think that this is going to be a bacterial infection. It may be a bacterial infection. So you are sending a culture for bacterial culture. Do you think that the culture will come back to you positive for Staphylococcus or any other bacteria? Do you think that the culture comes back positive or negative? So Kritika says it is going to be sterile. Exactly. So the answer is, in psoriasis, this is not an infection, isn't it? So in psoriasis, these pustules are going to be sterile pustules. These are going to be sterile pustules. So this is one of the most important points that you have to remember. Okay, pustular psoriasis, multiple pustules, but the investigation is going to be negative, so it is going to be a sterile pustule. Now, what if these kind of pustules become generalized throughout the body? So you'll be able to see an image like this, where there are multiple pustules are seen on an erythematous base. Okay, so please write down what is the presentation of generalized version of pustular psoriasis. You will be able to see group of pustules on an erythematous base. So you will be able to see a group of pustules on an erythematous base. Now again, if you send these pustules for bacteriological investigation, is it going to come back as sterile pustules or is it going to come back as something positive for a bacteria? Same question once again. We are talking about the same topic, psoriasis. So what do you expect, sterile or some bacteria? In the chat box. Exactly. So you will be again going to expect a sterile pustule, and these sterile pustules are commonly called as lakes of pus. Lakes of pus. So this is a common term that we call to describe generalized pustular psoriasis. So the other name that you may see in the examination is von Zombush reaction. Von Zombush reaction. So please write down these names as well. Generalized pustular psoriasis is also called as von Zombush reaction. you will be able to see multiple crops of pustules over the body on an erythematous base. And this is considered to be a generalized form of psoriasis. And it is also mentioned as lakes of pus. Now, please write down two very, very important points here. Okay, I'll just like to emphasize on these important points right away. Usually, when do you find a patient with generalized pustular psoriasis? Usually seen in a patient treated with systemic steroids. So it is usually seen in a patient who is treated with systemic steroids. So please remember, systemic steroids are not prescribed in psoriasis. Why? By systemic steroid, I mean our oral prednisolone, our methylprednisolone, so betamethasone, all these tablets, all these systemic steroid forms are contraindicated or less used in psoriasis. Why? Because if you prescribe a systemic steroid, what will happen? Upon discontinuation of the systemic steroid, the patient may develop acute generalized pustular psoriasis, which is also called as von Zombush reaction. So please note down, this is usually seen when the patient is treated with systemic steroids. Okay, if any kind of psoriasis treated with systemic steroids. And I just want you to note down the drug of choice in pustular psoriasis because it is different from other forms of psoriasis. Anyone, what is the drug of choice in pustular psoriasis? All of you are with me? Early morning club, all of you are alert or not? So tell me, what is the drug of choice in pustular psoriasis? Dr. Nikhil, you are right. You are right. That is for the other types of psoriasis. There is a small difference in the drug of choice of pustular psoriasis. Dr. Tanuja, Dr. Nikita, all of you are answering. Dr. Nikhil, very good. The drug of choice is acitretin. The drug of choice is acitretin. It is again a retinoid. This is an oral retinoid. This is called as acitretin. Now, quickly tell me, as all of you are in the chat box, what is the duration of teratogenicity of acitretin? Duration of teratogenicity. Why is it that dermatologist usually is afraid to start on acitretin? Because it has a long period of teratogenicity. The answer is 3 years. Navneet, you're almost there. So the teratogenicity is 3 years for acitretin. Okay, so these are some of the additional points. We'll get back to the detailed treatment of psoriasis. But remember, pustular psoriasis is treated with acitretin, and acitretin has a teratogenicity of 3 years. Yes, Rakshanka, doctor. So now let us see one more type of pustular psoriasis, impetigo herpetiformis. Now, impetigo herpetiformis is pustular psoriasis. This is pustular psoriasis in pregnancy. So this is pustular psoriasis in pregnancy. Now, what is so typical about this name? On the day of exam, when you see impetigo herpetiformis, we will be thinking that impetigo means it is going to be a bacterial infection. But herpetiformis means it is going to be viral infections. Among the options, staphylococcus, herpes simplex, everything will also be included. Plus, please remember, this is actually a misnomer. This is actually a misnomer. So what is impetigo herpetiformis? Impetigo herpetiformis is pustular psoriasis in pregnancy. So when do you find this pustular psoriasis in pregnancy? As you can see in the image, it is again going to be a generalized version. You will be able to see something similar to the von Zombush reaction. And the second thing that you have to remember is the duration. When do you see? It is usually seen in the second trimester, or sometimes in the third trimester. So this is the usual time when you see a pustular psoriasis in pregnancy. And I just want you to note one more important point, that is regarding the treatment. Because just now I told you that systemic steroids are contraindicated in psoriasis. But the only indication of systemic steroids in psoriasis is here. Okay, so please write down, This is the only indication. This is the only indication of systemic steroids in psoriasis. So please remember these important points. If you know all these important points, I'm sure that you'll be able to link all these things, and then you'll be able to correlate and get the right answers. No, not only for the fetal lung maturity, because why, Dr. Praveen, is because the other systemic agents, like what we have in psoriasis, like methotrexate and all these are contraindicated. Methotrexate is contraindicated. Acitretin we just discussed. It has a 3 years of teratogenicity. It is also contraindicated. So steroids are preferred, and after steroids, cyclosporin can also be used. So steroids may be the first choice, and then cyclosporin is another second option for pustular psoriasis in pregnancy. Okay? So that is all about pustular psoriasis. So remember, localized version, localized to the palms and soles, sterile pustules. Generalized version usually happens when someone is treated with systemic steroids. It is called as von Zombush reaction. Drug of choice is going to be systemic steroids, also called as the lakes of pus. Okay, systemic steroids, drug of choice for in pregnancy, not in generalized pustular psoriasis. In generalized pustular psoriasis, it is going to be acitretin. Fine. So let us go a little more fast now because we have enough topics to complete. So I'm going to the next image. Okay. No, Dr. Ajay, I said pustular psoriasis is usually seen in the second or the third trimester. Okay. So whenever we are going to start with any of these other agents of psoriasis, we'll definitely be making sure that the patient is not pregnant and neither is she planning to get conceived. Okay, because of the teratogenicity of all these agents. Okay, so if you have any other queries, please drop it in the Q&A box. I'll definitely answer before I leave the session. Okay, thank you. So now let us see the next one. Quickly, erythrodermic psoriasis is another variant. So what do you mean by erythroderma? So please write down, erythroderma means more than 90% of the body surface area turns red. That is called as erythroderma. More than 90% is the criteria. Okay, if more than 90% of our body turns red, and if it is associated with scaling, this is called as psoriatic erythroderma. And please remember, dermatology is considered to be a very cool subject. We tend to make people more beautiful or handsome, and we also take care of some itch. But there is rarely some emergency in psoriasis. So this psoriatic erythroderma is considered to be one of the dermatological emergency. Dermatological emergency. Why dermatological emergency? Because the entire body, there is going to be massive vasodilatation. And because of this vasodilatation, the entire body turns red. When there is a lot of massive vasodilatation, the thermoregulation property is lost. The patient may go into hypothermia or sometimes hyperthermia. The patient may go into a high output cardiac failure. So this is something that you have to treat it very cautiously in the ICU setting. Okay, that is why this is called as a dermatological emergency. So please note down the important point here. More than 90% of the body surface area turns red and it is associated with scaling. This is called as psoriatic erythroderma. So with your permission, I'm proceeding. So the last point out of all the things in psoriasis is psoriasis vulgaris is discussed, pustular psoriasis is discussed, psoriatic erythroderma is discussed. Now the last one is psoriatic arthritis. So please write down one mnemonic first. The mnemonic is cramps, C-R-A-M-P-S. So if you remember this mnemonic, you will be able to easily make out all the types of psoriatic arthritis. So the first one, C is for classic psoriatic arthritis. So I'll just write down 1 point each for each of these subtypes. Okay, classic psoriatic arthritis, which is the most common joint involved? I want some of you to answer. What is the most common joint that is involved in a classic psoriatic arthritis? Can anyone answer quickly? Excellent, Dr. Raji, Dr. Nikita, Rajeshwari, Dr. Nikhil, excellent. So this is the distal interphalangeal joint. Excellent. Okay, so the most common joint involved is distal interphalangeal joint, and this is C is for classic psoriatic arthritis. Now, what is R? R means rheumatoid psoriatic arthritis. Rheumatoid means, are we looking into a symmetrical lesion or an asymmetrical lesion? So this is going to be, exactly this is going to be symmetrical lesions. So symmetrical joint involvement. Excellent. Now, then if there is a symmetrical joint involvement, there can be a asymmetrical joint involvement. So A is for asymmetrical arthritis. Asymmetrical arthritis. And please remember, this is the most common type. Asymmetrical oligoarthritis is the most common type of psoriatic arthritis. And then the next one is arthritis mutilans. M for mutilans. Mutilans means there is going to be massive destruction of the joint spaces. Means this is the most severe form. Most severe form of psoriatic arthritis. And the last one, that is psoriatic spondylitis. Means what is going to be the most common complaint? Any psoriasis patient with an erythematous plaque and silvery white scales is complaining to you about a back pain. So what are you suspecting? So if a patient comes to you with a back pain, you're going to, so the most common complaint would be low back ache. So a patient of psoriasis is coming to you with a complaint of a pain in the distal interphalangeal joints or stiffness. What are you suspecting? At that time, you're going to suspect the classic psoriatic arthritis. A patient of psoriasis is complaining to you with a unilateral knee joint pain. Are you going to ignore the symptoms? Definitely not. Because why? You will never ignore a symptom of psoriatic arthritis, because all psoriatic arthritis is erosive kind of arthritis. So you will have to refer the patient to a rheumatologist. And is it seropositive or seronegative? What do you think? Psoriatic arthritis. So this is excellent. This is going to be seronegative arthritis. So please note down seronegative arthritis, erosive arthritis, and cramps. CRAMPS. Is everything fine? If everything is fine, I shall go to the next slide. I hope I did not complicate things. I just said whatever is important for you to remember. Okay, with your permission, I'm just proceeding further. So I would like to introduce two more mnemonics to you for remembering some of the important findings. So just try to remember these radiological signs in psoriasis. Okay, so just try to remember poison. So morning itself, I'm going to give you a poison. So what is a poison? This poison is radiological signs in psoriasis. That is pencil and cup deformity, osteolysis, ivory phalanx, sausage digits, opera glass deformity, and narrowing of the joint spaces. I would prefer that if you can take a screenshot of something so that we won't spend most of the time here, because we have two more topics to discuss. Just write down poison. Poison is pencil and cup deformity, osteolysis, ivory phalanx, sausage digits, opera glass deformity, and narrowing of the joint spaces. So in the MCQs, we can expect all of these are the nail changes in psoriasis except, or all of these are the radiological changes in psoriasis except. So try to remember it with a mnemonic called as poison. So I would like to introduce one more poison now. Okay, the second poison that I would like to introduce is nail changes in psoriasis. Same mnemonic. So what is the poison here? P is for pitting of nails. So pitting, please write down, this is the most common nail change. Pitting of the nails. The second thing is, in pitting, please write down what is the type of pitting that you see in psoriasis. You will be able to see deep and irregular pits. You would be able to see deep and irregular pits. So let me quickly ask you one more question now. Where do you see shallow and regular pits over the nails? Exact opposite to psoriasis. Shallow and regular pits are seen in. So the pits are these depressions. Pits are these depressions that you see over the nails. Yes, Dr. Aditya. The answer is very correct. It is seen in alopecia areata. So remember, shallow and regular pits seen in alopecia areata. So seen in alopecia areata. Very good. Bala Gavya is also answering. Excellent. So now let us see. P for pitting, OI together is oil drop sign. So this is the most pathognomic nail change. Please note down most pathognomic nail change. Okay, and S is for subungual hyperkeratosis. There is a thickening beneath the nail bed. Okay, and then O is for onycholysis, the split of the nails, and N is for nail plate dystrophy. And N is for nail plate dystrophy. So let us do it quickly. Poison, pitting of the nails, oil drop sign, subungual hyperkeratosis, onycholysis, and nail plate dystrophy. Most common type, nail pitting, and the most pathognomic type is going to be the oil drop sign. Done? Okay. So the last one. Sometimes what happens, the patients may present to you with some scaly lesions on the scalp. Okay. So if a patient presents to you with the scaly lesions on the scalp, what is the first differential diagnosis? What is the first differential diagnosis as a good doctor? Come on, doctors. If somebody complains to you with a scaly lesion on the scalp, some whitish kind of powder that you're seeing in the scalp, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Rakshanda is right. Dr. Nikhil is right. The first thing that comes to your mind is seborrheic dermatitis. What is seborrheic dermatitis? Dandruff, isn't it? So seborrheic dermatitis is the first differential diagnosis for scalp psoriasis. But it is very important for you to differentiate between seborrheic dermatitis and scalp psoriasis. How? Because you might have prescribed a ketoconazole shampoo for seborrheic dermatitis. Patient may be complaining that there is no change in symptoms. Second, on a clinical presentation, can you see that the lesions of psoriasis is extending beyond the hairline? So please write down lesions of psoriasis extends beyond the hairline. So if the lesions extends beyond the hairline, that is more likely to be psoriasis, because in seborrheic dermatitis, lesions do not cross the hairline. So this is a simple clinical examination that you can help yourself to differentiate between a scalp psoriasis and seborrheic dermatitis. I hope I'm clear. Done? So we have discussed about various clinical presentations now. I have told you like various clinical presentations. Now, how do we diagnose psoriasis? First thing is based on the clinical manifestations, because you may either have a plaque kind of a lesion, or you may have pustular lesions, or you may see some arthritis, or some scalp involvement. So based on the clinical scenario, you will be able to make out the diagnosis. That is the first thing. Now, there are a few more things that you should remember in psoriasis. That one typical feature that is seen in some patients is called as the Voronov ring. So what do you mean by Voronov ring? Please try to concentrate on this image, that you can see that there is a erythematous plaque. Can you see that there is a rim of pallor that is surrounding the erythematous plaque? This ring is called as the Voronov ring. Okay, so please note down, in some patients of psoriasis, you may see this condition called as this feature called as a Voronov ring, where there is an erythematous plaque is surrounded by a rim of pallor. This is called as Voronov ring. The second feature that we may see is the Kovner's phenomenon. Like how all of you have told earlier, this is also called as isomorphic phenomenon. When a patient would develop skin lesions at the site of trauma. Okay, skin lesions at the site of trauma. Can you name 3 diseases? I'll give you a simple mnemonic to remember, that is LVP. So where do you find Kovner's phenomenon? You basically find Kovner's phenomenon in lichen planus. Excellent. People are responding in the chat box also. V is for vitiligo and P is for psoriasis. So these are the common diseases where you find Kovner's phenomenon. Fine. So skin lesions at the site of trauma. Now let us go to the next one. So the next one, that a clinical sign that you can elicit in a patient of psoriasis is called as Auspitz sign. So what do you mean by Auspitz sign? Auspitz sign means pinpointed bleeding spots, okay, on scraping the lesion, is called as Auspitz sign. So just try to imagine that you're taking a glass slide and you're going to scrape off the lesions. And if you're finding pinpointed bleeding spots, this is called as Auspitz sign. But let us make it a little complicated. Let us add 3 steps to the Auspitz sign. The first step is you are taking a glass slide, and while you scrape the lesions, the scaling becomes more visible. Means accentuation of scales on scraping with glass slide. So any idea what is this called as? Accentuation of scales on scraping with a glass slide is called as the Grattage test. Very good. This is called as Grattage test. Done. And now going to the next one. So Varshini is exactly correct. Now let us see what is the second step. Once you continue the scraping, a shiny membrane appears. Shiny membrane appears on scraping. So what is the name of this shiny membrane? Dr. Tanuja is answering exactly. So what is the name of this membrane? Dr. Aditya also. This is also called as Bulkeley's membrane. And what is the last step? The last step is what I have written initially, that is pinpointed bleeding spots on scraping the lesions, that is called as Auspitz sign. So this is exactly Auspitz sign. So just quickly try to imagine that you are going to scrape a lesion. Once you scrape the lesions, you are able to see the scaling very clearly. This is called as Grattage test. Now, once you continue the scraping, what happens? The scales get removed. Once the scales are removed, what do you see? You see a shiny membrane. This shiny membrane is called as the Bulkeley's membrane. But you are not stopping. You will again continue to scrape the lesion. Once you still continue to scrape the lesion, you will be able to see these kind of tiny pinpoint bleeding spots. This is called as Auspitz sign. Okay, note it down, right? So Dr. Praveen wants to see scalp psoriasis once again. So this is a slide for Dr. Praveen. Scalp psoriasis. Please take a screenshot, Praveen. Okay? Done. Thank you. So now let's go to the histopathology. I'm sure that all of you would enjoy learning histopathology, isn't it? So many changes in the skin. So I will not make it complicated. In the histopathology, I always would like to prefer that you learn it according to the layers of the skin. Okay, stratum corneum, lucidum, granulosum, spinosum, basal, and what is happening to the dermis, etc. So whatever I have highlighted here is all important. In this histopathology of psoriasis, you will be able to see parakeratosis. Parakeratosis means the presence of nucleus in the stratum corneum. So there will be a thickening of the stratum corneum. This is called as hyperkeratosis. And most importantly, whatever I've marked in red is even more important. Monro's microabscess. So Monro's microabscess is a neutrophilic abscess. Monro's microabscess is a neutrophilic abscess. There are two neutrophilic microabscesses that you see in psoriasis. One is Monro's microabscess. The second one is the spongiform pustule of Kogoge. Spongiform pustule of Kogoge. So if they ask you a tricky question, in which layer do you find spongiform pustule of Kogoge? You can easily remember S for S. Spongiform pustule is seen in stratum spinosum. And the other neutrophilic abscess, that is Monro's microabscess, is seen in stratum corneum. Okay, S for S, stratum spinosum, spongiform pustule of Kogoge. So the histopathological features that you may note down right now is Monro's microabscess in the stratum cornea, spongiform pustule of Kogoge in the stratum spinosum, elongation of the rete ridges. So there is going to be a regular elongation of the rete ridge. So due to this regular elongation of rete ridge, this is compared to a camel foot. So camel foot rete ridges are seen. And the last important thing is there is suprapapillary thinning. Okay, suprapapillary thinning. There is a papillary dermis. So the area above the papillary dermis is going to be, and the space is going to be narrowed. This is called as suprapapillary thinning. So all these are the important histopathological features that you see in psoriasis. Noted, right? So this is the image for you. And going to the next one. So the last thing in psoriasis is that we are going to manage it. So we have diagnosed, okay, some patient is psoriasis vulgaris, some is pustular psoriasis, some is, psoriatic arthritis. Now you have to manage. So what is the basic thing that you have to keep in your mind for the management of psoriasis? Please remember, when less than 10% of body surface area is involved, you treat it with topical agents. So what are the topical agents? Topical agents means those agents, those creams and ointments that we get. So the most important topical agents are corticosteroids like clobetasol, triamcinolone. All these topical agents can be used. Okay, so clobetasol, betamethasone, all these topical corticosteroids. So please write down, when you get a patient of psoriasis, first check what is the body surface area involved. If the body surface area involved is less than 10%, start them on topical agents. Corticosteroids, keratolytic agents, vitamin D analogs, and topical retinoids are used. And you may remember the names as well. Keratolytic agents are like salicylic acid. Okay. Whereas vitamin D analogs are going to be, try to at least remember calcipotriol. So which is the vitamin A analog or the retinoid that is used in psoriasis? The answer is tazarotene. Tazarotene. So try to remember these names: corticosteroids, keratolytic agents, vitamin D analogs, and topical retinoids. Now, if a patient you have prescribed with a vitamin D analog, or you have prescribed with keratolytic agents or corticosteroid, is not responding, then the second agent of choice is going to be phototherapy. Phototherapy. So in phototherapy, you will be using narrow band UVB, broad band UVB, and PUVA. So what is the full form of PUVA? Anyone? PUVA means psoralen plus UVA. Okay. Psoralen is given along with UVA. So psoralen is given either topically or orally. Okay, and then you will be exposing the patient to UVA radiation. So that is the second. Now what happens if the body surface area is more than 10%, or if the patient does not respond, to the topical agents or to phototherapy, then we go to the second line of drugs. So the second line of drugs is going to be called as systemic agents, out of which the first preferred systemic agent is methotrexate. preferred systemic agent is going to be methotrexate. Okay. And then the other systemic agents that is available is cyclosporin and acitretin. Acitretin we have already discussed. This is a drug of choice in pustular psoriasis. So please try to understand all these names of the drugs. So the first line, topical agents. Second, in the first line, topical agents with or without phototherapy. If that fails, or if the patient is having more than 10% inclusion of the body surface area, then you go for a systemic agent. Systemic agent, try to remember three names: methotrexate, cyclosporin, and acitretin. Okay, methotrexate, cyclosporin, and acitretin. Now, see, permethrin is also used, but out of the first line agents, I'm just trying to mention the first line agents. Okay, Dr. Ajit Kumar. Now, we are not done. This is the first line agent. Systemic agents are the second line, and then we have another important group, that is the biologicals. So biological agents are those agents which you love to learn, isn't it? All those MAB agents. So please try to remember. I will give you a easy mnemonic so that you can try to remember. Okay, the first line biological agents that is used in the treatment of psoriasis, try to remember it with a mnemonic called as USA. And a same mnemonic, do you know what are the vowels that we use? A, E, I, O, U, right? So A, E, I and USA are some mnemonic that you can try to remember the name of the biological agents. So what is U? U is for ustekinumab, S is for secukinumab, A is for apremilast. Okay, A is for apremilast. And what is AEI? AEI means adalimumab, E is for etanercept, I is for infliximab. So if you try to remember these 6 names would be sufficient, but please remember the same mnemonic AEI can also be used to remember alifacept, efalizumab, and itolizumab. So these are the basic biological agents that we use. So Dr. Monica wants to see the previous slide. See, Dr. Monica, if it is possible, please try to take a screenshot. Done? So topical therapy, phototherapy, systemic agents like methotrexate, cyclosporin, and acitretin. And if this is also not working, then we go for the biological agents. So biological agents, it is like USA, ustekinumab, secukinumab, apremilast, and AEI, that is adalimumab, etanercept, and infliximab. So please try to remember these names, okay? Because out of all these things, they may finally test you with these biological agents, especially in the INI-CET. Okay? Shall I proceed further? So I want all of you to be in the chat box now. Let us have a quick revision of psoriasis. We are done. Okay? A quick revision. So what is a pathognomic nail change in psoriasis? Quickly. So Tanuja is answering. How about others? All of you. Very good. The pathognomic nail change is going to be the oil drop sign. So what is the drug of choice in pustular psoriasis? Pustular psoriasis. Kritika, Tanuja, all of you are answering. Very good. So I'm not calling out all the names. The first few names only. Acitretin. Excellent. What is the drug of choice of pustular psoriasis in pregnancy? Very good. That is going to be systemic steroids. What is the other name of pustular psoriasis in pregnancy? Other name of pustular psoriasis in pregnancy? Impetigo herpetiformis. Excellent. What is the most common joint that is involved in psoriatic arthritis? That is going to be the distal interphalangeal joint. Excellent. So where do you find lakes of pus? Lakes of pus. Multiple pustules are seen over a erythematous base. Excellent. That is seen in von Zombush reaction. So what is a dermatological emergency in psoriasis? Which is a dermatological emergency in psoriasis? Excellent, Sarana. That is going to be psoriatic erythroderma. So what are the neutrophilic microabscess that you see in psoriasis? Neutrophilic microabscess. Excellent, Shiva Pritika. What is the other one? Munro's microabscess and pustule of Kogoge. Excellent. Munro and spongiform Kogoge. Okay, done. What is the teratogenicity of acitretin? Great batch. Excellent. Very good response. This is going to be 3 years. Excellent. Keep going in this way. What is a pinpoint bleeding spot? Pinpoint bleeding spot, not Koebner's. What is a pinpoint bleeding spot that you see? This is called as the Auspitz sign. Excellent. So that is all about psoriasis. I hope things were clear about psoriasis. Now let us quickly see the next disease as well. Okay, we don't have much time, so I'll just rush through. Koebner's phenomenon, yes, Sharath. Koebner's phenomenon is seen in LVP, lichen planus, vitiligo, and psoriasis. Okay? Done. So this is a very simple topic. I'll just go through the very important things because I think we will have to wind up in another 15-20 minutes. So pityriasis rosea. Okay, pityriasis rosea. Just write down the important points in pityriasis rosea. So how does a patient present to you with pityriasis rosea? They present to you with a single plaque lesion. And after the single plaque lesion, multiple smaller eruptions of smaller plaques are seen. So what is the name of the first manifestation? What do you call for this plaque lesion? This is called as the mother patch or called as the Herald patch. This is also called as the Herald patch. Okay, so the first lesion with which this pityriasis rosea patient comes to you, this bigger lesion is called as the Herald patch or the mother patch. Now, what about the scales? What is the peculiarity of the scaling that you see in the lesions of pityriasis rosea? These scales are actually seen in the periphery. So these peripheral scales are excellent. This is also called as collarette scales. Okay, this is also called as collarette scales. This is also sometimes mentioned as the cigarette paper-like scales. Cigarette paper scales. Done? Now, since the scaling is present over the periphery, if you try to imagine it's a 3D type of imagination, there is a sign that is called. What is it called as? The sign is called as the hanging curtain sign. Hanging curtain sign. Since the scales are present in the periphery, you can also call it as a hanging curtain sign. Now, the next important point is, what is the pattern? See, there is one plaque lesion followed by multiple eruptions of similar small lesions. Now, these lesions are usually distributed over the trunk in this fashion. So, what does this resemble to? This resembles to a Christmas tree distribution. Christmas tree distribution. This is also compared to a fir tree. Okay, fir tree distribution of the rashes. Excellent. So, yes, Dilfan, just one moment, I'll show you the previous slide. Okay, now most important, this is also associated with an infection. And what is the infection? The infection that is associated is HHV7 and HHV6. HHV7 and HHV6. And what is the management of this patient? A patient who is coming to you with a complaint of a single plaque lesion followed by multiple eruptions of similar lesions over the trunk. And the patient is having collarette type of a scales, is having a hanging curtain sign, is having a Christmas tree distribution of the rashes. What is the management? Please remember the management is self-limiting. So you just need to reassure the patient because these lesions are going to disappear within 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, the lesions are going to disappear within 4 to 6 weeks. We just need to give some symptomatic relief for the patient. Done. So this is all about a very small topic, that is pityriasis rosea. But please remember, for an MCQ point of view, you have enough questions that can be made. Christmas tree distribution, collarette type of scales, hanging curtain sign, Herald patch, all these are important. And remember, the associated infection is HHV7 and HHV6. Okay, so this is again an image for you. This is the Herald patch. The first patch, the bigger one. The second image shows the Christmas tree pattern. Hanging curtain sign. Now let's do the last disease for the day. Okay, this is called as the lichen planus. Lichen planus is again a chronic disease, but the good thing about lichen planus is this is a papillosquamous disease which may show spontaneous resolution within about 6 months or maybe in 1 year time. Because earlier when I was discussing about psoriasis, I said there is always a flare and a remission, flare and a remission. And pityriasis rosea, it was self-limiting. It was going away within 4 to 6 weeks. Lichen planus can have a spontaneous remission. We will see what are the important things in lichen planus. Do you remember the 6 P's in lichen planus? 6 P's of lichen planus. Plain topped, Dr. Aditya is saying. Pruritic, purple colored, excellent. Anuja, Aditya, Dr. Ritu, polygonal, very good. So let us see what are the 6 C's of lichen planus, 6 P's. So these are plain, purple, polygonal, pruritic, papules and plaques. Plain, purple, polygonal, pruritic, papules and plaques. Please remember, pruritic means lichen planus is a very itchy disease. Patient will complain of lot of itching. And secondly, always in dermatology, try to describe the lesion. So in the exam or in your real life, when you get a patient of dermatology, of skin, what you have to do is you have to describe the lesion by yourself. If you describe the lesion, our mind will never allow us to describe this lesion as an erythematous lesion. Purple color will come to your mind. Okay, so purple colored lesion that is going to be very itchy is more likely to be lichen planus. And what is the other important point? In psoriasis, we were seeing the lesions over the extensor surfaces, whereas in lichen planus, the lesions have more predilection to the flexural surface. The lesions are more commonly seen over the flexural surface. Okay? So please note this. So what is the most common site? Again, this is going to be the flexures, and the most common, one of the most common site is going to be the wrist area. So see the typical lesions, the pruritic, flat-topped, polygonal, papules and plaques seen over the flexural areas like the wrist. And what is the next point that you have to remember is the Wickham's striae. Can you see there is some whitish kind of lines that you see over these lesions? So these whitish kind of lines that you see over these lesions is called as Wickham's striae. So the white linear lesions seen over the plaques is also called as Wickham's striae. Is also called as Wickham's striae. Now, what if these kind of white lacy kind of a lesion is seen within the oral cavity? Okay, these are also going to be seen because in the mucosal lesions of lichen planus, you will be able to see white lacy lesions in the oral cavity. So can you see these white lacy lesions in the oral cavity? Now, what is the problem with the oral involvement of lichen planus? Any idea? This is very important. Why? Because this is pre-malignant. Excellent. This is pre-malignant. So what is it pre-malignant to? Is it pre-malignant to malignant melanoma, basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, or any other kind of carcinoma? So this is pre-malignant to squamous cell carcinoma. So the mucosal lesions of lichen planus is pre-malignant to squamous cell carcinoma. Now the next thing is lichen planus can also have a scalp involvement. Okay, the hair involvement. White lacy, I have written LACY, Dr. Praveen, LACY, white lacy pattern that you see within the oral cavity. Okay, now in the hair involvement, please remember this is called as lichen planopilaris. And what is the important point to remember? Does it lead to scarring alopecia or a non-scarring alopecia? It leads to a scarring alopecia. It leads to a scarring alopecia. Okay. So lichen planus, before we go into further changes, let me quickly revise. Lichen planus, the patient would be complaining to you with multiple polygonal plain topped papules and flakes. The color is going to be purple in color, and the patient will definitely complain of a lot of itching. And which is the most common site that you look for? You will be looking for the flexural aspect, especially the wrist area. When you look at the image, when we look at the lesions very closely, you'll be able to see some white fine lines over the lesions. This is called as Wickham's striae. Now you are going to examine the oral cavity of the patient. Once you check the oral cavity, you will be able to see this white lacy pattern. And these white lacy pattern means there is a mucosal involvement of the lichen planus. And we have to remember that this oral involvement is dangerous because it is pre-malignant to squamous cell carcinoma. Now look at the hair of the patient. Once you look at the hair of the patient may have lichen planopilaris, which means the patient may be going into a scarring type of an alopecia. Now, one quick thing that I would like to add here is when we studied about psoriasis, we said acute gutted psoriasis, the infection associated is group A beta hemolytic streptococcus. When we studied about pityriasis rosea, I told you HHV7 and HHV6 is associated. Now tell me the infection associated with lichen planus. What is the infection that is associated with lichen planus? Excellent. The infection that is associated with lichen planus more commonly is going to be hepatitis C. Please try to remember hepatitis B and C both can be seen. Even herpes simplex is also associated, but the most likely association or the more common association would be hepatitis C. Okay. Now, just like psoriasis, in psoriasis we check for the nail changes. Now let us see what are the nail changes in lichen planus. In lichen planus, please note down the most common nail change in lichen planus. Who can answer? Most common nail change. Dr. Nikhil is answering, very good. The most common nail change is thinning of the nails. Excellent. And what is the most pathognomic nail change? This is the most pathognomic nail change. What do you call? You call it as the pterygium of the nails. So there is a wing-shaped extension, isn't it? So this is called as pterygium. So pterygium is the most pathognomic and thinning of the nails is the most common. So in psoriasis, pitting was the most common, oil drop was the most pathognomic. When you come to lichen planus, thinning is the most common and pterygium of the nails is the most pathognomic. So along with these, we will be able to see pup tenting of the nails like this one. And we can also see entire 20 nails of the fingers as well as the toes is involved. That is a 20 nails dystrophy. So all these are the various nail changes that you see in lichen planus. Now going to the favorite part, that is the histopathology. So in histopathology, again, please try to remember the important points. That is, whenever in the MCQs, whenever they mention a wedge-shaped hyperkeratosis, wedge-shaped hypergranulosis, all these things means this is going to be lichen planus. Previous slide for Dr. Vishnu. Okay, can you take a screenshot of the previous slide? Nail changes in lichen. Okay, tracheonychia I have written 20 nails dystrophy. Okay, all the 20 nails are going to lose its normal architecture. Okay, that is called as tracheonychia. Okay, so different nail changes are seen, out of which the important ones I have underlined: pup tenting, the 20 nails dystrophy, pterygium of the nails, and the thinning of the nails. Please try to remember at least this much. And you can also try to remember there is going to be some longitudinal ridges as well. Okay, see, onychodystrophy is again the same. Earlier I said entire nails mein there is dystrophy. Onychodystrophy means some nails may lose its architecture. Okay, Dr. Harini. Done. So now let us see the histopathology. In histopathology, please try to remember wedge shaped. Write it in red. Wedge shaped anywhere is going to be lichen planus because we don't have many areas where we mention it as a wedge shape. So wedge shaped hyperkeratosis means thickening of the stratum corneum, or wedge shaped hypergranulosis means thickening of the stratum granulosum. Try to correlate and learn. When we were learning about psoriasis, in psoriasis we learned there is hypogranulosis. Okay, now in lichen planus there is going to be hypergranulosis. Okay, now what is the most pathognomic histopathology change that you see in lichen planus? The most pathognomic change is the colloid bodies or the civetti bodies. What are colloid bodies or civetti bodies? These are seen in the stratum basale, and these are the necrotic keratinocytes. These are the necrotic keratinocytes. So we will also be able to see a liquefactive degeneration called as a Max-Joseph space. So remember, in psoriasis, the rete ridges were elongated regularly. Whereas in the case of lichen planus, you will be able to see a sawtoothing kind of a rete ridge. So sawtoothing appearance of the rete ridge is seen. And in the dermis, you will be able to see a band-like lymphocytic infiltration. Please note down wedge-shaped hypergranulosis, wedge-shaped hyperkeratosis. Most pathognomic is civetti bodies or the colloid bodies. You'll be able to see liquefactive degeneration called as Max-Joseph space. The rete ridges are going to be like a sawtooth. And then finally, there is going to be a band-like lymphocytic infiltration of the upper dermis. So these are the histopathology changes in lichen planus. Shall I move? This is the image. So the treatment of lichen planus, just like what I have mentioned to you initially, lichen planus may show a spontaneous resolution, but spontaneous resolution may take a longer time. Okay, say around 6 months to up to 3 years can be taken for a spontaneous resolution. And the other important thing that you have to remember is all the lesions of lichen planus, like those lesions that you saw in the wrist area, once it is healing, it heals with a hyperpigmentation. Post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation is also seen, very disturbing for the patient. And how do you treat lichen planus? The treatment, again, you can go for topical steroids. If the patient does not respond to topical steroids, you can even go for a oral steroids. You can add azathioprine or dapsone, many other treatment modalities. You can also go for a phototherapy, just like psoriasis. PUVA can be done, narrow band UVB can be done. So all these are the treatment modalities that is available in lichen planus. So topical steroids, systemic steroids, and phototherapy is used for the treatment of lichen planus. Patient may show spontaneous resolution in 6 months to 2 years, and the lesions may heal with post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. NB means narrow band. Okay, narrow band UVB. Okay, Dr. Kritika. So let's quickly summarize about lichen planus, and then we will do few MCQs for a quick revision, and then we'll wind up for the day. So what is the most pathognomic HPE finding in lichen planus? So the most pathognomic HPE finding is the civetti bodies or the colloid bodies. Excellent. So what is the most pathognomic nail change that you see in lichen planus? Nail change. Exactly. That is going to be called as the pterygium. Excellent. So what is the infection that is associated with lichen planus? The infection that is associated with lichen planus is most likely to be hepatitis C infection. What is a pre-malignant skin lesion in lichen planus? Pre-malignant skin lesion is going to be the oral lichen planus. Please note down one more point here. Okay, hypertrophic lichen planus is also associated with pre-malignancy. Okay, is associated with malignancy. Hypertrophic lichen planus is a rare entity that is usually seen in the distal extremities. Okay, so please try to remember oral lichen planus and hypertrophic lichen planus both are pre-malignant, and the infection associated is hepatitis C. Now, one more quick question before I wind up. In psoriasis, all these areas are involved, but there was no mucosal involvement in psoriasis. Okay, please try to note it down. No mucosal involvement in psoriasis, but mucosal involvement is present in lichen planus. Psoriasis was affecting the extensors, whereas lichen planus is affecting the flexures. So try to correlate and learn when you are making your notes. Okay. So lichen, let us do some important MCQs also. Yeah, scaling is also correct. Scaling are more prominent in psoriasis, whereas it is not in lichen planus. So lichen planus is associated with all except pterygium, thickened nail bed, tachyonychia, tented nails. What is the answer? Thickened nail bed is not seen, isn't it? So what is happening to the nails? Is it getting thickened or thin? Thinning of the nails, isn't it? Thinning is the most common. Excellent. Easy MCQ. What is this? What is the drug of choice for a pregnant woman in the second trimester with pustular psoriasis? See, the question may be a little different. Some patient came to you at 24 weeks of gestation with multiple pustules that is seen all over the body. So what will you prescribe? So the answer here is prednisolone, because prednisolone is an oral steroid and that is a drug of choice. Okay, all others are not given. So 35-year-old male presents to you with complaints of a 5 mm annular skin lesion followed by eruption of smaller lesions throughout the trunk. Lesion shows colorectal scales. What is the diagnosis? What is the diagnosis? All of you are correct. All of you are saying that it is a self-limiting disease. The diagnosis is pityriasis rosea. So what is the name of this lesion that is seen here in the diagram? What is the name of the lesion shown? Excellent. The lesion shown is the Herald patch or the mother patch. Very good. So next question. A young lady presents with white lacy lesions in the oral cavity and the proximal nail fold has extended into the nail bed. What is the likely diagnosis? So once you're getting such a clinical question, please remember the proximal nail fold has extended to the nail bed means pterygium. Okay, this is pterygium. So the likely diagnosis is going to be lichen planus. Very good. So the last one, a 35-year-old male presents to a clinic with a deep-seated pustular lesions over the palms and soles. You are able to see pustules, and these pustules are sterile on examination. What is the most probable diagnosis? So pustular lesions in an adult that is going to be sterile on examination is going to be palmoplantar psoriasis. So it should be pustular psoriasis, but among all the options, palmoplantar psoriasis is the single best answer. Okay. So where do you use PUVA therapy? Psoralen followed by UVA therapy. Is it psoriasis? So somebody is answering A. Please read all the options. Please read all the options. Psoriasis, vitiligo, mycosis fungoides, all the above. So the answer is all of the above. So don't be too confident. Please read all the options and then answer. PUVA therapy is used in all these diseases. Okay, is used in all these diseases. So all of the following regarding lichen planus is true, except does not involve the mucous membrane, associated with hepatitis C, topical steroids are the mainstay of therapy, spontaneous remission is seen. So what is the answer? This is the odd one out. Why? Because lichen planus, you always see a mucosal involvement. In which papillosquamous disease you don't see a mucosal involvement that we discussed today. So today we did not discuss about a mucosal involvement in psoriasis, and we did not discuss a mucosal involvement in pityriasis rosea as well. Okay. So patient with psoriasis was started on systemic steroids. After stopping the treatment, the patient developed generalized pustules all over the body. So the most likely cause of this condition is, okay, so now that you know that generalized pustular psoriasis or von Zombush reaction is the cause, isn't it? But please remember, on the day of the exam, do not get confused whether this is a drug reaction. This is not a drug reaction. Patient prescribed steroids after withdrawal of steroids, getting generalized pustular psoriasis, this is going to be von Zombush reaction and not a drug reaction. Okay, don't get confused. So I think let us call it a day. It was a nice session with all of you. I hope all of you have understood whatever we have discussed today. So I hope everything went well and smooth in this session. So thank you so much. It was retail ridges is seen. So retail ridges, Dr. Aditya, not Aditya, someone else has asked. See, retail ridges is something that you see between the epidermis and the dermis. Okay, retail ridges, it actually belongs to the epidermis. Okay, we will discuss about it whenever we get a chance. Okay, so it was a very nice session for me. I enjoyed the session. So I hope all of you had a good session as well. So I'm so glad to be connected with you. So I hope to see you again in the future. Okay, wish you all the very best and wish you all the very best for the upcoming exams as well. Okay, thank you so much, all of you.